Parfait. Καλησπέρα σε όλες και όλους.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the fourth session of the day. This session is entitled Preservation, Protection and Restoration of Seagrasses, a strategic challenge for biodiversity in the Mediterranean. I would say that this is a conference that is a part of the Forum for Seagrasses, and that has a Hellenic-French approach. In this conference we wanted to organize in the Institut Français d'Athènes in order to raise the awareness on the seagrasses. We wanted everyone to know more about seagrasses and to promote the protection, restoration, and preservation of seagrasses. During this forum, I had the opportunity to realize even better how important seagrasses are for marine ecosystems. I believe that all the participants have very interesting things to share. First of all, we have Frédéric Villers from the Office Français de la Biodiversité, Martial Bardolet-Richter from the Institut Balear de la Natura, Guillaume Leport, Blue Seeds, Bertin Mancenot, Conservation Collective, and Julie Deterre from Andromède Oceanology. And, of course, the discussion will be moderated by Maria Salomidi, the priestess of Posidonia Oceanica and of the sea in general. So, without further ado, we can proceed with the presentations. I would like to give the floor to Maria so she can say a few words as an introduction.
But I think that some of these things are exaggerated. What you actually think as important is Posidonia itself. That's what it does, the magic to people. Believe me, I've seen it to many people. And I think that this is what we should be focusing on. So we heard before some very nice best practices actually in Greece, focusing on the conservation of Posidonia. And now we have the honor to have with us some actual Posidonia champions coming from other Mediterranean countries. And I believe that this is a very interesting session for us all because it is very important to learn from people that have started way before us, and it's important for us to understand the challenges and also to understand the opportunities, because to conserve Posidonia oceanica is not something that we can do alone. This is something that all Mediterranean countries should ally for this cause. So I would like to welcome Fred Villers from the OFB for the first speak today. I'm sorry, I'm really sorry. So we will start with Martial Bardolet.
Thank you very much. Thank you also the Institut Français, also the other organizations. I'm super happy to be here. I know that you know that the Mediterranean Posidonia Network was born here in 2019 in Anchors Away, in the land of Posidon. So I'm super happy to see this community. Has been a long way to arrive here. We have been working a lot, but I think this is a very nice community growing in Greece. I've seen a lot of changes, especially from my side. When I came here, I didn't know what I will tell, but I saw that Balearic Island was a bit doing a lot of things. I was very nervous, but now I want to tell you about the new impacts, new regulations that we are facing. Well, I work in the government. I've been working in Posidonia for 20 years. I started with the cartography, and we were flipping out about the extension of the Posidonia. So we were working about this, and I'm the head of the surveillance service now. I will tell you about that, but I'm also president of Mallorca Preservation, and I'm also glad to see a lot of conservation collective also with Berta, etc., doing a lot of things, because conserving Posidonia is a shared responsibility, so everybody has to be part of it. And I normally start with this picture because, I mean, this picture has been seen for many, many years. I know this could be in the Mediterranean, anywhere. And people normally think, I mean, not here because it's a specific forum, but normally people think that in the sea there are only fishes and algae, no? And when I show this picture, the people see forest, they see just a blue mask in the waters. And I'm talking with people like, what do you think is down there, no? And it's very hard because conserving Posidonia is very abstract. It's very hard to understand what is down there, no? So normally I change to this picture and I say the forest is not ending in the coastline, so it continues. So it's a big forest. It's not a small plant that we are protecting. So you have to visualize, and it's very hard for me to explain to my citizens. I mean, I work in the government. I have to explain to all the Mallorcan people and the Balearic people what is the Posidonia seagrass. And I think this is a new paradox of how we have to change. So down the water is thousands of hectares of this kind of forest, no? And we are trying to say that Posidonia is not an algae. There's a mantra that we keep doing. It's not an algae, it's a plant. We step up, it's not a plant, it's an habitat. Well, it's a plant too. But then it's a plant, but it's a forest. And now what we're talking about is like we explained that it's kind of a jungle because it's full of biodiversity. In the jungles, they have birds, but we have fishes. There's a full of interesting aspects in terms of biodiversity, transparency of the water. We also explained that the oxygen that we are breathing in the island, some part of the oxygen is being produced there, etc., etc. But also, for me, there's an important part of it, which is the emotional part. That's why there's a kit there, because there's an emotional connection, at least in the islands, I think also in Greece and other areas, because we love to swim in the Posidonia, or a habitat or ecosystem. And this is a thing that maybe we don't talk about when we talk about data and things, but I think it's important to show this. We also show this picture. This is a real picture of 9 meters long. We put this in the schools, etc. And we can explain for 1 hour or two about this. One of the things that we like to show is the reef, no? That people don't know that Posidonia creates reefs, and it helps us also with the carbon sequestration, but also with the reduction of the waves, the energy of the waves that arrive to our coast. And we also try to explain that Posidonia is related to the land. We live in dunar systems in some areas, so Posidonia produces sand. We don't have rivers, or sand is an organic sand being produced in 80% or a big quantity of foraminifers or different microfauna. And it's very important to keep these dead leaves. We don't like to tell death Posidonia. It's a bad name, so this ocean literacy, we have to move it. But it's also because we are losing sand in some areas, and we want to involve the touristic sector. We have a nice project called Life Adapt Calamayor, with the hotel industry is looking to see how we can keep the sand, because it's a lot of money, and this going there. And this project is very interested because they are calculating how much is the sand, how much in nature-based solution we can do with the Posidonia, of course, as main thing, no? And we can remove the Posidonia, not in natural parks, but in some urban areas. We try to do it, but we have to do it very, very carefully. And we have some guidelines for the municipalities, not the government, the people that are really there taking care of the how you have to do it, and you have to do it in the correct terms, in the correct dates, etc., etc. But now the summer comes, the sun is still there, and we have one of the hot spots in the Mediterranean, a part of the different areas that we will talk about, is Formentera. We had so many boats, and we have a lot of impacts with big anchors. We are reducing this, and in this last project of WWF, you can see in the maps actually the hot spots in the Mediterranean. So we have one. And we are trying to reduce, we say to the captains, etc., but we need to do a lot of things. But this was 2011, where the start of the awareness, big awareness in Posidonia starts with these pictures that we have seen, no? These pictures went to the media, we went to the press, and this awareness, this social, civil society efforts started, no? Especially against the big yachts. But also because it's very hard to restore, as you have seen with the conference, etc. It's very hard very expensive, very hard to restore, and it takes like maybe 100 years to recover the ecosystem. No, it's more replanting than restoring. So it's nice, a scientific purpose, social engagement, etc. But as government, we have to try to do the passive restoration, which is the most effective way to try to conserve, to do the conservation, at least for a part of a government that want to really get into the conservation of the Posidonia. What we can do with passive restoration, especially legal framework, maritime special planning, regulation, we will see what we're talking about. In specific places, we can do eco-mooring. We have a lot of eco-moorings in the Balearic Island. It works, and it's a good tool. We'll explain also what is the Posidonia Surveillance Service very shortly. And cartography and apps, we will see also with some apps like Donia, which is great. The awareness that civil society can be part of the solution, not only from bottom down, etc. So it's bottom up and also from the government, but then the society. Everybody can be part of the solution. And we also do some monitoring with citizens. I'm here to talk more about the regulations that has been taking part. We start with this natural heritage of the UNESCO in Posidonia. So Posidonia was in 1999 part of the humanity. So this was a message that we got. In Europe, we have also directive habitat, a special Natura 2000, etc. But it was not enough for us. And we wanted a clear message to our Posidonia. So we had to create this decree in 2018. It's a very strict decree. And we banned, it's forbidden to anchor any boat, not a small boat of 24, no, any boat in Posidonia and any place, not only in Natura 2000. So in all the Posidonia around the Balearic Island, it's forbidden to anchor in Posidonia. And this, when we started, it was very hard. It was very hard. We also have different aspects of the legal framework that I don't want to be very, we'll focus more in the anchoring today, but we can follow this. But to protect the Posidonia, as we said before, is not to protecting the plant, it's protecting like a forest, no? We have 800 square kilometers of pine trees in Balearic Island, and Posidonia is 650 square kilometers. So the size of the protection is huge, and we had a lot of problems, but we have to be on the sea. And this is the Posidonia surveillance that we start. It's 18 boats in the Balearic Island Autonomous Region, only for Posidonia. We go, we check the anchor, we talk with the captain. At the beginning, there was not belief in us. But finally, with these little boats, we move these boats. And I can tell you, once the boats move this, they want to try to anchor better the next time, because it's very hard to move these boats. Also, when they have clients drinking champagne or whatever they're doing, they don't like. So now we have a very good relation with the nautical sector. Because they want to also be part. We also do create some tools for them, because we want to. I'm a sailor also. I like to sail in Greece especially, also. So we need to give tools, no? Eco-mooring, etc. Another interesting aspect is the collaboration with all institutions, that we started with some institutions, but now we have all the boats that are from the administrations connected. In the central Posidonia, it's a phone, but we connect these boats to have a common way to check the anchors, no? And we do the monitoring with the scuba clubs, the volunteers, and we do the monitoring. We have 45 stations, and it's like a way to participate. And finally, everything is nice in Balearic Island, and everybody wants to have a part of it. It's very fashion, etc. But we had a very hard start, no? After this, Valencia get the decree and put a decree, no? Everything was settled down. We have a chaotic start, but now Valencia, which is another autonomous region, has the same decree as Balearic Island. Now, Spain, in national Spain, in all Spain, they have these guidelines. It's a very big document. They have the guidelines for the guidelines of anything that you can imagine. So they started to do these guidelines for all national, also Timocea. And now, recently, we have the national decree, real decree, so it's signed by the king. Royal Decree of Posidonia is a national law, and it's very strict. It's as similar as we have now. And this is a QR. This is in Greek, so I translated. And if you want to have the decree of the national in your phone just now, you can, because you will ask me a lot of questions, and it's very hard because it's very extensive. But this is a QR. I do it with cloud. I was not doing it myself. But I think it's very interesting to spread this regulation. I think it's strict, and maybe it's paperwork maybe at the beginning, but then they will put a lot of efforts. What we have in the Balearic Islands is some tools, because I'm also a sailor, and I also go to, in a place where a captain and I say where I have to anchor. We can put a decree, but then you have to give tools. And I think one of the tools that they were most successful for us, apart of the surveillance, eco-mooring, etc., it was the apps, the cartography, and giving the apps to the sailors. We are now trying to put it in the plotters, also the cartography, not only in the apps, also in the plotters. And we also have some collaboration with Andromeda, with Donia, to have a manager in real time when the AI is anchoring Posidonia, it sends us a message. So these kind of new tools, technology, I think they are working well. So if you were asking the 6 points to trying to be successful, or what, this is what I think. One is clear regulation. No, this is what we have. Regulation is important because you can say whatever, and they say no, but the regulation doesn't tell me thing. You have to be in the sea, not put yes or regulation, and then so you have to be have both. Be in the sea, have before the season work with the nautical sector, etc., and then in the sea. Technology, I think technology also, Dimitris is also a very fan of these technologies. And what is most important, I think we got this, is the behavior change. So now when people, at least the local people go to anchor, they check and they see the dark, they try to look the sand. At the end, we are given the tools to find the sand. I mean, if you are a sailor, you need the sand. And then 2 years more, before I finish, institutional coordination. We need to help each other. And of course, this Mediterranean Posidonia network that we are building all together in the whole Mediterranean, because for me, I don't want to have first-class Posidonia in some areas and second-class. We have to build everything together so the boats don't go to one side and another. And we have to learn from different places that we are doing, I mean, amazing things that have been heard today. This is a short video of 1 minute, sorry. And I want to finish with this because, I mean, we're still trying to check how we can communicate things, no? How you communicate to the society or to the children, what is the oxygen of the Posidonia, no? And this is, I think, is a nice example. And this is Xavi Popé, it's not mine. I don't know if you will put the sound.
More than 100 million years ago, a group of terrestrial plants embarked on a journey from the land surface to the marine environment, adapting to live underwater. Posidonia oceanica, a seagrass species endemic to the Mediterranean Sea, has performed many essential functions to sustain the health of this delicate environment for millions of years, being a fundamental marine habitat. Invisible oxygen molecules are released by this plant, source of life for marine species. This is the reason why it is considered the lungs of the Mediterranean. And these meadows also capture and fix carbon dioxide, playing a vital role in mitigating climate change. Our eyes are not prepared to perceive the movement of these molecules, but if we could, we would witness a hypnotizing dance in this underwater forest. However, recent studies reveal that this dance is in danger as Posidonia meadows are in regression. If we could clearly perceive the crucial role of this marine plant, would it help us to protect it? Perhaps the most important things in life are the ones we cannot see.
Well, this is just an example that there are a lot of creative people now doing a lot of things to just express what is the Posidonia seagrass. We have also Posidonia soundscapes, everything. So the society is really a big part of it. Thank you. I'm sorry for the video was a bit. Thank you.
Thank you so much, dear Marcial. We have all been very inspired by what the Balearic government has been doing along its beaches, and it's a great example for us all. Unless there is a clarifying question, maybe we could clarifying question? Yeah, just for a clarifying, else we can move on to our next speaker. So I would like to invite Guillaume Leporte. Okay, yes, we can have Fred now. So I would like to invite Frédéric Villers. For those of you that were here yesterday, you maybe have heard his keynote lecture. So Fred comes from the Office Français de la Biodiversité, and he will give us his talk on the Mediterranean cooperation, Mediterranean Posidonia Network Roadmap for Posidonia Conservation. Thank you, Fred.
Merci. Je vais parler en français.
Thank you so much. I will speak in French. Were you here yesterday evening? Most of you were? Yes or no? Good. Thank you. I'm asking you why. Because I decided to improvise in order to say different things from yesterday evening. Now, let me introduce myself. I am Frédéric Villers, Deputy Director at the French Office for Biodiversity. And I have yet another hat. Together with Arcier and others, I represent the Posidonia Oceanica Network, which from now on we will call MPN. Now I have a presentation which is similar to yesterday evening's, and the reason why I was in delay, and I apologize for that, is that I tried to obtain the information from all the sessions held today in Greek. Anna and Maria did provide me some information about what was said today, and I think that we all are interested in knowing more. Now, let me start improvising, as I said. I would like to call your attention, and this is why I will not project a presentation. So I found out that today, amongst other things, very important things were said. There was a useful feedback with a mass participation. There are issues shared by all the countries participating. And this is important. It's important to see the shared threats and challenges. Now, we all are in love and we have passion for sea. We all want to safeguard Posidonia. Now, the question is, where can we start from? What is the starting point? But to act, you have to understand. And to understand, you need to rely on data. This is an important piece of information. So what is the information we have? What is the knowledge we have? And of course, knowledge never suffices. And this pertains to all sectors. Now, this conference allows us to exchange ideas, and this is important because, sometimes studies and reports are enough, but we need to decide what is the data necessary to be able to have regulations. If I wanted to talk about, for example, habitat mapping concerning the European directives, well, we need to have a long horizon in order to talk about long-term conservation. Let's assume that we have a captain, a naval captain in front of me. Now, the captain would like to have knowledge of the seabed, aerial images, and satellite information may provide information about the location of Posidonia, but sometimes this is not enough. We may need more detailed information, and this is where knowledge lacks. Sometimes we need to launch specific campaigns, and this is what our network does. We rely on people, on staff able to obtain data in the field. The data today is a big issue. Most scientists today generate data. The data not used, at the end of the day, remain stored in a computer. But the real use of data is to be used, right? And this is the role and the mission of each and every one of us when it comes to Posidonia. We can achieve more protection if we use in an optimal way the necessary knowledge and information. This is why in the framework of MPN, or the Mediterranean Posidonia Network, we want to create an observatory. Today, for example, we know about the Mediterranean meadows. We know that it has an area of 2,000 hectares, but we don't know enough to provide details about mooring, etc. So we need more information, and the observatory will provide this. Now, when it comes to protection, there are two levels of prioritization. First, either from an environmental point of view. So when we launch an action, we may, for example, give priority to the surface protection. Then there is the logic of the action itself, so the feasibility of the action. Let me take the example of a factory. We want to upgrade the quality of Mediterranean waters. This is a project entailing funding and 10 years of time. This is a priority. But unless we address the problem of Posidonia degradation, then nothing can be done. I need to decide whether I will focus on a more extended protection or on faster results. This is why we want to place emphasis on the mature situations. If we have organizations like an NGO, for example, ready and prepared to create some voice. And if we have procedures, clear procedures in place and political will, then funding is the only thing that misses. This is already a very good start. It does not allow us to protect the whole Mediterranean Posidonia meadows, but it is already a good starting point. When we talk about actions, we usually talk about rehabilitation, restoration. Restoration is trendy and sounds good, but we do restore what is degraded, and we have to conserve the meadows which are in a good state. So we need to be preemptive, protecting those which are in a good state. Just forbidding actions is not suffice sometimes. What is more important is to define what rational use means. And we should never forget that there are actions for the conservation of the meadows in good state. When it comes to restoration, we talk about natural restoration, passive restoration. We have this distinction. Why? Because passive restoration, passive has a negative connotation generally. What is mostly important today is to release pressure. Then nature follows. If nature fails to follow, then we may have to double efforts in order to help nature recover. But the first priority is to help natural rehabilitation, so to ease the pressure. I know that we all share the same problems and the same challenges in all the countries facing the Mediterranean. Beaches are important. Today, however, beaches are under strain, under pressure. The users of the sea, prefer sandy beaches. So how can we achieve the reverse phenomenon? Funding is necessary for the beaches and signaling. A communication strategy is also required. At the same time, tools are inadequate. People are necessary, and the people are behind decisions. We need to find compelling arguments for the policymakers. We have data from surveys performed in France showing that people are being accustomed to what is happening. They are more sensitive, they are more aware. So we need to shift the mindset, to change the behavioral paradigm. At the same time, allow me to acknowledge that there is tourist development, tourist growth. Tourist growth, however, puts at risk beaches for socio-economic factors. This is a real threat. Today, beaches may bring about revenue to communities, and we need to protect beaches against erosion. There's a trend to develop, however, infrastructure, marina infrastructure, short ports, etc. So when we have such a project, what can we do to help restoration? We need to be able to see that we have to promote a maritime special planning. We need a threshold, a minimum consensus. So we need to identify the sectors in which already there is consensus. For example, the beaches. There is convergence as to the need to protect beaches, while at the same time help restoring Posidonia. When a meadow is less than 20 meters away from an infrastructure project, it means that it is really at risk. This is how, in France, we determined that any infrastructure project needs to be distant minimum 20 meters from the Posidonia meadow. This is a minimum. Moreover, we need to talk about environmental evaluation, and this is a true procedure, specific tangible measures to avoid any risk. And when it comes to the impact of a project, the feasibility of a project depends on impact. Countervailing measures need to be taken. Corrective measures can be taken, but only as a last resource. We certainly cannot accept to be detrimental to Posidonia oceanica, but of course we need also to have a cost efficiency study. We need to see what is less important and what is the impact of each and every project. This has to follow a consultation at the national level. We know that for a specific zone, we will do this and that, and it depends on what is at stake, of course, at the local level. Sometimes measures need to be taken ad hoc. But as I said, distance is key. We have many scientific data when it comes to aquaculture, although I'm not an expert, but I know that an aquaculture site cannot be installed if it does not have many hundreds of meters distance from Posidonia meadow. So we need to determine whether there is room for all activities and what are the distances that need to divide them from the meadow, seagrass meadows. We know that the pressure exerted by tourist flows is great. You know that in Greece. But in the case of anchoring, for example, what's the objective? There are some sites where we can do prevention because it is free from boats. This is logical. We can be preemptive, trying to preempt, to avoid any bad impact. And so we can create a mooring system. There are areas, though, that are full of boats. 6 years ago, a similar solution was presented. First, we have to abide by the regulation in order to get rid of the biggest and most damaging vessels, those with the heaviest anchors. The heavier the anchor, the biggest the impact to the meadow, of course. But there are other sectors as well in which we can come up with solutions. There are sandy sites in which anchoring may be done. In other cases, this may not be feasible. In the case of a site, for example, that is full of Posidonia oceanica and many vessels, then we need to create a buoy network. When the French authorities wanted to ban the anchoring of vessels of more than 20 meters, there was reaction and resistance. That, for the people, meant that all the big vessels would leave. However, the ban was applied based on scientific proofs. As a result, though, many years later, we can see that France still has recreational boats and yachts. So yachts have not left despite the anchoring ban. Today, yachting and entertainment can coexist with the ecosystem conservation. Anchoring for small vessels also entails a cost financed by the European Union and the member states. But the real question here is, should we manage the operating cost? How does this cost, after all? I could speak for a couple of hours, but let me be brief. The operating cost should be taken into account today by paying for the buoy. In some cases, we can have a balance. Let us stop talking about anchoring just in financial terms. Let us talk about blue economy. Buoys is a good solution and is a decision to be taken at the local level, at the regional level. Today, it does work in some regions, and it's important to evaluate the impact. That's all about anchoring. And I would like to touch upon two elements. First, awareness raising. Today, in all our countries, there are communication tools, communication strategies, and campaigns, and awareness-raising campaigns. Coral reefs are very important, as much as Posidonia oceanica. We need to be familiar with the importance of continental reefs and Posidonia oceanica. People may have different approaches, but the objective needs to be one. What is the single objective for us to achieve? As soon as we set targets, specific targets, and a target group, then we will be successful in communicating, in raising awareness. And we need to use the appropriate channel, the proper channel. If we want to raise awareness of the elderly, we need to use TV or radio. If we want to raise awareness of the young people, we'll need to use social media, for example. We also keep talking about carbon, biodiversity, etc. Yet, we need to convey other messages as well. For example, we don't only need far-reaching projects and ambitions. We had 40 meetings in the past 6 years. Every time that there is discussion, new ideas are born. Our network has shown that in practice. Under the coordination of the important players, there are sub-networks which work locally. For example, in Tunisia, there's a network that is a twin MPN, South Med Posidonia Network is its name, which brings together various countries, Tunisia, Libya, Egypt, and others, which address the very same problems as we do. You are the Posidonia community of Greece. Who will be the coordinator? You need to appoint someone who will coordinate all efforts in Greece. This is very important because certainly at the end of this conference, you will draw the same conclusion and you will feel sorry, as I did many years ago, about this conference having ended. But if you do take the first steps correctly, then you will progress. Thank you.
Wow, that was quite impressive for improvisation. Thank you very much, Fred. I think I will have to wait for the questions. Okay, I believe we should go on to our next speaker. So I would like to ask Guillaume Leporte, who will be presenting together with Irene Ruiz Garcia from the Blue Seeds, and he will be talking to us about lessons learned and opportunities for collaboration from a Blue Seed study on pressures and solutions. Thank you, Guillaume.
Bonsoir, Kalispera. Tout le monde va bien?
I apologize for this delay. Thank you very much for the invitation. It is very important the fact that we heard Fred previously, just like we did yesterday. Fred talked about the Mediterranean Posidonia network. I am here in order to present to you two studies conducted by Blue Seeds, an agency with which I collaborate in France. Blue Seeds studied some very important issues at regional level, and it did that in order to set the orientation of the next roadmap of the MPN. So we are going to talk about studies, but also funding. Unfortunately, I'm not going to show you some beautiful Posidonia images. The two studies I would like to talk about very briefly are the ones that you can see on the screen. The first had to do with the funding in the Mediterranean during the last few years. Funding for the promotion of protection and preservation of Posidonia. And the second study pertains to a regional analysis of the pressures, but also of the possible solutions that can be implemented in the coming years. Solutions that will lead to the best possible outcome with regard to the protection of Posidonia. The first study that was funded in the context of the MPN focused on the importance of financial flows of funding. In order for us to develop our strategy and in order to identify the potential funding tools that could help us, we examined the basic origins of funding for the protection of Posidonia in the Mediterranean. Then we checked which are the actions that receive the funding. We also identified the shortcomings and the needs. The goal was to identify the main shortages, the gaps, the needs that people out there on the field talked to us about. Because, we had many interviews with different stakeholders and also with many financiers. And the basic thinking behind what we did was to come up with a funding strategy that will allow us to support the members of the network. So I'm going to show you some basic data. We analyzed the hundreds of financial flows that pertained to different activities aimed at the protection of Posidonia. The crushing majority of these had to do with the protection of Posidonia oceanica. And the financial flows stemmed from European funds mostly. And also projects that were European ones. Moreover, there were some other activities that were receiving more funds compared to others. And this was quite strange because when we talk with researchers, we realize that there are certain activities and projects that are missing with regard to monitoring and mapping. So this is one of the conclusions of this study. Something else that we realized was that many European funds were used mostly for the protection of Posidonia oceanica, and that the majority of the projects that had this objective received European funding. In 2024, 100 million euros were channeled to several different activities for the protection of Posidonia. What do you think about this amount? Is it a lot or not? What do you think? Maybe I'm not that good of an entertainer since you do not answer my question, but anyway, so we compared this data with a program that is called Seagrass Breakthrough Target. This is an international program that aims at identifying the funding required for the protection of seagrasses, not only the Posidonia oceanica, but seagrasses around the world. If we talk about the Mediterranean Posidonia, we can see that annually the funding needs for all the activities that contribute to the protection of Posidonia amounts to 320 million euros. No, excuse me, says the speaker, 336 million euros. For the time being, we have 320, so you can see that there is a gap. There is a very important gap. Now, in order to see what kind of measures need to be taken in order to reduce this gap. In order to answer this question, we conducted several studies in Mediterranean countries, and we saw that in the different Mediterranean countries there were certain activities that received more funding compared to others. And these amounts, when we estimate them on the basis of hectare, showed that in Greece, for example, the Mediterranean funding for the whole of the Posidonia is limited compared to the one given to France or Spain. So, in the future, we will see why this is the case, and we will come up with solutions in order to ensure funding for all involved countries. In the context of the study, we used several questionnaires, and we collected approximately 100 replies from project managers and other stakeholders. And the main conclusions that stemmed from the questionnaires are the following. With regard to the project operators and project managers, there is an important problem because they want to develop long-term projects that will have a significant impact on Posidonia oceanica. Of course, due to the limited funding, the implementation of projects becomes far more difficult. A problem that many respondents talked about, and if I understood correctly, you actually talked about this today in Greece. So they talked about a lack of mapping and monitoring, especially of specific pressures exercised on Posidonia oceanica in certain countries. Following this study of the financial flows that we conducted in collaboration with MPN, we decided to conduct a second study. We thought that first we could assess at regional level the amount of money spent on the protection of Posidonia. We could then proceed to the next stage. Actually, Fred talked about it. And that is why we conducted a second study in order to identify the real needs. If we could do that, we would be able to better protect the Posidonia meadows and also identify the measures that need to be taken in the future. For the network, for MPN, the objective is to support the solutions that will be proposed by experts in different countries. And then find funding for these solutions so that in the end, integrated projects can be implemented. So, in brief, our goal is to collect information from different countries, develop a database at the level of MPN in order to have a better knowledge of the current needs, have knowledge of the needs that are not met right now, and also have knowledge of the needs that need immediate funding. We are also trying to collect data that we will then use in order to raise the awareness, data having to do with mapping, because we have realized that mapping is indeed a problem, and that for several states, mapping is one of the major obstacles they face. Moreover, many states talk about security issues when we're talking about safety issues when we're talking about mapping. So we are trying to collect as many data as possible at the level of network. Then we analyze the pressures in the different countries, pressures coming from anchoring, pressures coming from pollution, from desalination, aqua farming, from bad management of the waters and the waste. So we are trying to identify the main areas that are under pressure, always using the official scientific data. And one of the reasons that I decided to take part in this forum was because I wanted to get some quality answers from the scientists and from the people that operate out there in the field. Now, just like Fred did, after we identify the pressures, we will then implement the right solutions. Solutions that can be supported by MPN. Then we want to conduct a regional study in order to identify the best practices applied in the different Mediterranean countries and see how these solutions could be copied by other countries that are interested. So the network has as an objective to convey these best practices and this experience to the states that are interested. And of course, we want to develop a spectrum of solutions along with their cost, timeline, the surface that each solution will protect. In other words, solutions that can actually give a tangible result. We have completed the first stage of the study. We collected mapping data, data having to do with provisions and regulations that are in force in every country. And an important difference that we saw when it comes to the scientific progress in the northern and southern Mediterranean region, something that keeps on coming up, is that there are shortages when it comes to mapping data. We do not have sufficiently precise mapping data that we could use in order to protect Posidonia oceanica. Then there is the issue of legislation that we need to keep in mind. Most European countries have a minimum base of regulatory provisions. Okay, but the problem is that these provisions are not always implemented, and there is no control or audit. Another issue that came up is that the decision makers are several and diverse, and this, of course, complicates the administrative processes and decision-making for the protection of Posidonia. And with regard to the pressures, we have realized that very often there are some environmental impact studies, but the annual follow-up and the analysis of the real impact in the long run is not always guaranteed. Moreover, there are information that are not precise and are incomplete. Now, with regard to the funding, we realized that there is a lack of funding for the protection of Posidonia meadows. And in the context of the study of WWF in collaboration with the UCM, we developed the Big Calf Mediterranean, which is basically a fund that will fund the blue carbon ecosystems. It also contributes to the protection of the mangrove forests and could actually strengthen the protection of Posidonia meadows. This is a fund, a tool, if you like, that will soon be announced. Moreover, the European states are trying now to implement the European regulations at regional level. A first version of these European regulations will be implemented at the regional level in September. And this will allow the European states to get more funding for the protection of Posidonia oceanica. In the coming years, the network hopes to be able to actively participate in the efforts for fundraising on behalf of the partners in the Mediterranean that protect Posidonia oceanica. We have the European funding for the protection of nature, or for the protection of blue carbon, funding that also leads to the development of several different projects. We also want to develop a portfolio of proposals. We want to collaborate with all experts and specialists in the countries that are interested, so as to inform them about the priority solutions and the experiences that can be found in other countries. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Guillaume, for this very interesting presentation. And I would like to ask Mrs. Berta Manzano from the Conservation Collective to give us her talk.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me? Yeah. Hi, everyone. I am Berta Manzano. I work for Conservation Collective. The very nice thing of being one of the last people to present at the end of a day of proceedings is that almost everyone has said everything that I was going to say, so I'll be quite brief, I think. Conservation Collective is a global network of place-based environmental foundations working to protect natural ecosystems and native species, reduce pollution, and build climate resilience. To date, we are a network of 22 foundations around the world. And in the Mediterranean, you've probably met a few of my colleagues who are present here today, obviously the Cyclades Preservation Fund, who leads the Greek Islands Seagrass Alliance, the Ionian Environment Foundation, and the Argos-Saronic Environment Foundation. And then we also work in other parts of the Mediterranean. We work in Turkey, in Cyprus, in Croatia, in Italy, and obviously in Spain as well, where Marcial Bardolet is the president of our foundation in Mallorca, the Mallorca Preservation Foundation. But we also work in other parts of the world. We work in the Indian Ocean, in the Caribbean, and in the United Kingdom. I don't know how to change the slides. Oh, there you go. Sorry, yeah, so that is the map. And basically, I think it is this sort of very wide geographic diversity what led Annie Mitropoulo from the Cyclades Preservation Fund to invite me to this panel. Almost all of our foundations work in a very similar manner. They exist to support local groups or local projects to regenerate nature in their regions. And they do this by providing essential funds, and very relevant to what Guillaume was just saying, but also providing strategic support in communications, in program development, access to policy actors and local partners, and also experience and knowledge sharing from being part of a wide network like ours. Yeah, I would basically today what I wanted to talk a little bit is the role of Conservation Collective as a central organization. We are a lot more generalist than a lot of the conversations that we have had here today. We are not academic institutions leading research on seagrass restoration, for example, nor are we governmental organizations paving the way for advanced protection. But we are very good at creating a network of best practices, but also opening new channels of funding in areas where they didn't exist before. And we do that by kind of working mostly with private and corporate funders. And we have worked over the past year with clothing companies, with yachting companies, and as well with even cosmetic companies. And what's, in our opinion, really important of our role is we are the educators a little bit of these funders, where in a lot of the occasions, these partnerships stem from the fact that funders and donors have never gotten involved with organizations like us and with initiatives like seagrass restoration. And it's our role to essentially kind of open them of these opportunities for funding. And for example, I would like to highlight the example of Edmiston Yachts, which is a big yachting company who, by the time that they started funding the Cyclades Preservation Fund program of Posidonia Alert in 2022, they had no idea what Posidonia was. And they were completely oblivious of what anchoring did to their to meadows. And so now, little by little, they're starting to understand that, and they drove essential funding that also has led us a little bit to where we are today. And we obviously acknowledge that these companies are absolute part of the problem, and by no means we want to leave them off the hook. But we also take a very pragmatic position of trying to understand who are kind of the businesses that hold the keys and the funding to drive these sort of projects and fund them, and these corporates really do have a lot of money. So on that context, I would like to talk about three sort of main initiatives that hopefully blend together a lot of the work that and conversations that we have been talking about today. Some specific examples of Posidonia and seagrass restoration, protection and awareness raising, and how we have, through Conservation Collective, managed to weave that in with private and corporate philanthropy. So in the context of protection, we already have heard a lot of the examples that I would normally highlight. The Greek Island Seagrass Alliance, spearheaded by Seagrass Preservation Fund, or the Safe Porous campaign funded by the Conserving Environment Foundation, or IC's mapping of the inner Ionian funded by the Ionian Environment Foundation, with the support of our corporate partnership with Edmiston Yachts. So today I'm going to take you a little bit further afield to Menorca, where we have a foundation that is called Menorca Preservation. And over the past 5 years, they have been working with the OPSAM and the Marilles Foundation to increase their protection of a marine reserve called the Isla Elaide Marine Reserve. And this is an uninhabited island outside of Menorca, a few miles of the coastline. And it needs a little bit more effective protection, kind of going back to the point that Fred was making earlier about maintaining what's already in good status and making sure that it stays that way. And there has been research that shows that since the establishment of this marine protected area in 2019, the fish biomass and the Posidonia meadows have very much kind of improved. There has been an over double of the fish biomass within the reserve. But unfortunately, part of this sort of no-take zone or highly protected area was reduced in 2019. And so the role of our foundation there, Menorca Preservation, is to not only provide the funding for the essential research and monitoring that makes the case and the argument for increased protection and maintaining what's already in good status, but also kind of communicate with the local stakeholders that having a marine protected area in their backyard brings a lot of socioeconomic benefits to the fishers, to the local diving shops, to the hospitality businesses in Menorca that benefit from tourism. And they do this in a sort of very bottom-up approach. They do not sort of show the research and inform the local authorities and not take any local stakeholders and local context into consideration. Marilles Foundation and Menorca Preservation bring together on an biannual basis local stakeholders in their Isla Elaide forum, where people share solutions, concerns about the marine protected area and arrive to solutions together. And kind of, for example, the latest one that they decided last year was reducing the top speed that boats can circulate in within the marine protected area. And this sort of helps, obviously, with Posidonia seagrass, but also with all of the associated life and wildlife that depends on it. So this is probably one of the most impactful projects that we have in the network currently, with a lot of long-term potential. But unfortunately, this project is extremely, extremely difficult to fundraise for. I have kind of lost count of how many times I tried to shoehorn this project in calls with potential private and corporate donors, because they don't understand it is really quite difficult. And it was only a few months ago that we finally managed to convince a Canadian cosmetics company out of everyone that a bottom-up approach, community-led approach to marine protection was sort of very fitting to their strategy. So that sort of leads me a little bit to the second pillar of our work in Seagrass, which is restoration. And today there has been a lot of comments, which I completely agree on the pitfalls and the difficulties of active restoration. And that is absolutely true. And we're completely behind that. But it's extraordinary, the appetite of private funding, especially companies, businesses, to fund active restoration projects. If I had €1 for every time a funder has asked me during a pitch call, do you do any Posidonia restoration projects in the Mediterranean? I would be able to fund a lot of these projects just on my own, and they are all quite expensive. So we are starting to dip our toes onto these projects. We're still being quite careful, no less because a lot of things can go wrong in these projects, and communicating them to our audience of donors, which, as I said, is usually mostly corporate and private individuals, is extremely complicated. And our role as Conservation Collective, as I said, is a little bit sort of educating these funders and making them understand that even if it's doing a project that sort of shows what is the right methodology for restoring seagrass in a specific location, is through trial and error, is a good enough result for conservation. That's a really difficult conversation to have with them, and they don't usually get it. So we are starting to do some of these projects, and in fact, probably the most well-established and the best example is a Posidonia nursery in Malaga that is being done and funded by our Malaga Province Environment Foundation with support from the Marbella Club Hotel. And this project is developed by the Fundación Aula del Mar Mediterráneo. And Malaga has lost a lot of its seagrass beds, and there are very few that are left. And what we are trying to do there is collect 800 shoots of healthy Posidonia shoots that have been washed ashore, transplanting them onto sandstone plaques and growing them in an ex situ Posidonia nursery. This is following the methodology from the Asociación Belmarí that was quite successful in Ibiza and Formentera. And then the idea is to transplant them onto a 1 hectare pilot site 70 meters away from shore. And obviously then monitoring them over the years. And funnily enough, the same cosmetic company that funded the the marine protected area in Menorca is also funding this Posidonia nursery as a sort of slight reward for them, in a sense. And something quite similar is happening in Tuscany as well, where we are doing some seed propagation for Simodoceana rosa on the lab with our Tuscany Environment Foundation and the Biosciences Research Center. Yeah, these are some really nice photos of it. And kind of to maybe round it up a little bit, I would talk a little bit about awareness raising and education projects. This is the absolute underpin of everything that our foundations do at Conservation Collective. None of the work that we all do in this room would have any impact if the local communities that are at the forefront of it didn't respect it or bought into it. And I actually was really glad to hear yesterday HCMR praising the Cyclades Preservation Fund about how effective they are at driving awareness raising for local communities and getting their approval. But if I had to choose one specific example, I would talk about our Turquoise Coast Environment Fund in the southern and eastern coasts of Turkey, where they supported the production of the East to West Mediterranean documentary produced by Matt Gokop from the Eco Legacy Foundation that sort of appeals to the cultural heritage of Posidonia in Turkey and how it's massively threatened by over-tourism and using eco-mooring successes from Corsica as a roadmap for their protection. And we then did a tour around Turkey, but also in the UK of this documentary with some really big funders that are helping us sort of raise quite a lot of money for seagrass conservation projects around the Mediterranean. And these projects of awareness raising are quite usually easy to pitch to funders, especially in the short term. As Fred was saying earlier, they are creating tangible materials, photos, videos, things that can be shared, comic books we have seen, are very appealing to potential funders. They can see the results and it helps them understand what the problem and potential solutions are. But they're quite short-term and short-lived. Their interest only lasts a couple of years. Until then, they start asking, okay, but what about the active restoration? Where is the Posidonia restoration activities? And so we have to be really quite careful when we're thinking about multi-year funding and approaching really big funders with awareness-raising projects, because chances are at some point that the results that they are asking for, that they envision, are not going to materialize in the way that they expect. So I think yeah, I think I'm going to probably leave it there so that I'm short and sweet, hopefully. And hopefully I have been able to give you a little bit of a snippet of how we work at Conservation Collective. We have a lot more stories like these. But what I like to call it is we have a carefully thought out approach of all hands on deck, everything, everywhere, all at once. But that hopefully helps us maximize every single opportunity that comes, especially from the private and corporate sectors, to restore and protect seagrass meadows in the Mediterranean. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much, dear Berta, on this very insightful presentation. And last but not least of our today's panel, Dr. Julie Deter, coming from Andromed Oceanology, actually a private company, but driven by state-of-the-art technology and science, and very much focused on the protection of the marine environment and Posidonia in particular. So, thank you, Julie.
Bonsoir, vous pouvez remettre.
Good evening. If you could please wear your headsets once again. I hope that you have paid attention to the previous presentations, because now, in my turn, I will try to show what is the link between all these presentations. The previous speakers talked about the importance of scientific data, and I will try to explain to you where we get this data. Andromed Oceanology is a small-size business employing 15 people that has its seat in southern France. We implement projects in all marine ecosystems. Projects pertaining to investigation, mapping, restoration, either natural one or with the use of tools. Now, today, I want to give you a short presentation of what we have offered to Posidonia oceanica. And I would also like to talk about the different problems that we encountered. Since we are a business, we use both private and public funds. Guillaume actually talked about these funds, this mixed origin of funding. In red color here on the screen, you can see the difficulties that we encountered. I would also like to talk about the importance of the maps of habitats and of the pressures that lead to several consequences. I'm going also to talk about raising awareness and education. Now, the maps of habitats are very important. Many people just say that these maps exist, but they do not make use of them. Indeed, we can find maps on European sites. There is also a website that has collected all the existing maps. But if one takes a look at these maps, they will see that the precision of them is not enough. It does not allow us to know exactly where we can find Posidonia oceanica. If one wishes to do detailed work, these maps are not enough. It's like using an old map in a hiking tour without the exact trails. So since 2006, we have been involved in the development of high-precision maps. Of course, this required us to use oceanographic tools. We use drones, satellites, and several other tools that give us the possibility to have a better imaging of the seabed. We use sonars and many data coming from the field. In other words, we use divers. Here you can see a diver that follows a vessel and collects data and conveys the data, and also images. If we connect all these different levels of data information and use them along with the existing literature, we come up with very detailed maps. That is 1 to 10,000 scale. For the 1,800 kilometers of coastline that we have in France, far shorter coastline compared to the Greek one. But we do have detailed maps. You can even see the traces of the anchorages. This map was first developed in 2014 and is being updated every 6 years, or even more frequently, depending on the pressures exerted on a specific area. The difficulty we encountered was working at the national level and finding the necessary funds in order to bridge the gaps having to do with mapping. For that reason, as a company, we went there on the field in order to bridge the gaps that existed in the maps and in order to come up with a very detailed one. And this was the first and most important step. So first, we completed these maps, and then we thought that we should make them available to the public. Posidonia is under protection since 2018. Up until then, there were not detailed maps, and that is why there was such a catastrophic impact on Posidonia. People did not know what to do or how to approach Posidonia. But now there is a mobile app that anyone can use in order to know where exactly to anchor. This application is Donia. Recently, we reached the 100,000 visits to this app. Very soon, we realized that an app that helps users anchor far from Posidonia meadows was very beneficial. But we thought that we could add some more information, like, for example, a map of all the depths, places when one can fish or can dive. Anyway, information useful to the ship owners and to the captains. We found some private funders like AOS and the Société Générale Bank. And this is how we developed Donia Manager, a tool that has already been mentioned, a tool that helps the managers and the interested parties to check in real time the area that they are monitoring in order to decide, in order to see where the ship owners have anchored in an area where they shouldn't. On this map, that is a scale of 1 to 10,000, someone can find very useful information. But apart from this map, we developed another one, the multi-pressure map. Then we combine these two maps. I repeat, the one shows where there is fish farming, where there is erosion, where there is anchoring, how many inhabitants there are in an area. All these are information of great value. So we collected this existing data. And we combined this data with the ones that we had on fish farming. And this allowed us then to use all this data in parallel with the pressure map and the impact map. The greater the pressures are in an area, the greater the impact will be. "11 years ago, in 2015, we realized that the Posidonia meadows were under enormous pressure in 80% of their surface. And here, on this graph, you can see that the Posidonia meadows are the meadows that are under the biggest pressure stemming from the anchoring. Okay, they are of a large surface, but at the same time, they are highly vulnerable meadows. In order to understand how anchoring impacts Posidonia, we collected data on the state of these meadows. When they are in a bad state, they turn into a dead mass, easy to recognize, and we tried to record how many meadows are sick or dead. And then we depicted these meadows on our map. In the small green map, you can see, for example, a meadow which is depicted in red when it is in bad condition and in green when it is in a good condition. Then we combine this data with the maps in order to have a better understanding of the pressures and of the reaction of the meadows to these pressures. Of course, the effect of these pressures sometimes is a combined one, and that is why we have increased impact on Posidonia. Posidonia, of course, reacts, but eventually comes a point that can no longer withstand and starts collapsing. So we identified the threshold before which Posidonia resists and after which it collapses. And here you can see how we have depicted this threshold in different colors and when there is a need for immediate intervention in order to restore the meadow. Now, among the different pressures, the most important one is urbanization. There are, of course, many other kinds of pressures, but urbanization is very important. Anchoring comes last when we're talking about the importance of pressures. Anchoring is the last of the pressures, but at the same time is responsible of 20% of the bad state that Posidonia is in, and the impact is not linear. 2.2 boats, to put it differently, when we have 2.2 boats in 100 square meters of Posidonia, there is serious impact on the Posidonia meadow. In black color, you can see the negative impact of anchoring. Now, how can we possibly quantify the consequences of big vessels on the Posidonia meadows? In order to design these anchoring maps, we use the IS, which is the automated system used by the boats, a system that identifies and gives information on each boat. We use this data in different ways in order to know where they are exactly, to know their position, and to see the anchoring that they have done. Here on the graph, you can see some measurements that were made in Nice, France, and in yellow, you can see the vessels over 50 meters long and in blue color, the vessels that are smaller than 10 meters. And if we compare these sizes to airplanes, we can see, of course, that the difference is great. And if we compare this with the system of AIS, we can see that the number of boats is much smaller. With the AIS system, we can identify the boats that are over 24 or 50 meters, and that is why many data are pertaining to the boats over 50 meters. And the AIS data are data offered to us by the operators, and we need to divide them by 19. These data are of 2017. Today, we have different stations from where we collect data. Now, here you can see that every color corresponds to a boat. And we can see how this boat moves in the sea. We can also see when the boat anchors. When it anchors, there is a circle being created, and in the center of the circle is the anchoring point. And when it comes to the big boats, we know that 2/3 of the chains they use are underwater, and that they impact the seabed. We were using this data in the period 2010-2015. We recorded approximately 60,000 anchoring points, and we then studied the impact of anchoring and the way that the anchors influenced the habitats. So we saw that there was an increase of anchoring by 191%. Overall, there were 8,000 anchorings per year. And what is the conclusion that we can draw from this data? That 1/3 of the seabed is used for anchoring by a boat at least once a year. Posidonia oceanica is impacted less compared to other habitats. With regard to Posidonia, we have 36 hours of anchoring. Especially in southern France. And this data that we got actually helped us improve the management. Now, another conclusion that we can draw from this data is that anchoring is not homogeneous throughout the year. It is obvious that from May till September and during weekends and especially afternoon hours, during lunchtime, there is the biggest traffic of vessels. And with the black arrows here on the screen, we show two major incidents, like the Cannes Festival and the Monaco Yacht Show. These are the incidents with increased anchoring. Among these vessels, only 4% bear a French flag. The 3/4 of these vessels are vessels of different flags. This was good news for the French government, which then showed great interest in learning more, because the French government realized that it could make some interventions in cases where there was anchoring in places that was not permitted. Then we had to convey the message of the importance of Posidonia and of the catastrophic impact of anchoring. That is why we developed a guide of measures, which will then submitted to the decision makers. And of course, there was a great reaction. Now, another very important information is that when we talked with the French agencies and we were telling them about the catastrophic impact of anchoring, they were telling us that we were not right, but we used this data in order to show them that large surfaces of Posidonia had been destroyed because of anchoring. Of course, this led to the reaction by the French government, which took the decision to forbid the anchoring of boats of over 45 meters. And in 2019, another decision was issued that prohibited the anchoring of vessels of over 24 meters. And of course, along with these decisions came sanctions. What is important to see is whether these laws, these decisions are effective. It is difficult to know, but it's worth checking. So we use the AIS data from 2010 to 2024 in order to identify the points of anchoring and see what has been its effect. And here in red color, you can see when the law was passed, and we can see that there has been a reduction of the impact of anchoring on Posidonia meadows. With green here, you can see the impact, and we can see that the impact is declining. The vessels of 24 meters, as I told you before, are not allowed to anchor in areas of Posidonia following the decision that was taken. And thanks to this decision, we can see that the impact on the Posidonia has been greatly decreased following this decision. And if we want to talk about the smaller boats, smaller than 24 meters, that are not covered by the legislation, we can see that even these boats reduced their anchoring over Posidonia meadows. On the right, you can also see the fines that were imposed on boats that actually anchored in meadows. There were some owners of boats that were actually convicted following the fines. We also checked which boats used the Donia application. The boats that actually used the application anchored less in meadows.
De transfert vers les autres pays, donc ça on a pu le regarder, parce que c'était une question évidemment, on faisait jouer.
We also saw that in Corsica, the number of boats that anchored in Posidonia meadows did not change, in contrast to areas like the Balearic Islands where the legislation is very strict. Now, with regard to the small boats, we used satellite data and some indicators in order to estimate and assess the state of the meadow. Boats smaller than 24 meters have an impact when they anchor. The point is, how many boats need to anchor before a significant impact can be recorded? Here in red color, I show you the different areas of anchoring. So maps are needed in order to help the ship owners to anchor in the right place. These maps are available, but they are not of great precision in order to be incorporated in the Donia application. We have used maps from France, Italy, Balearic Islands, Croatia, and part of Greece. especially the South Aegean. We have also maps of parts of Turkey that will soon be provided to the DONIA application. Another example that is not functional in France, however, I would like to mention,
parce qu'on trouvait qu'il n'y avait pas de raison que ce soit des fonds publics qui...
is the buoys. We have developed buoys for vessels, buoys that one can pay for. And depending on the anchoring day, there is a different amount to be paid. There are 10 buoys in total, and the taxes for these buoys are very high, higher than the rental cost of the buoy. Maybe what we need to do is to see how this rental of buoys can be implemented in other countries where the taxation is lower.
Industrie donc très forte. On a montré.
Now, by way of conclusion, and when it comes to yachts, recreational boats, and small boats, small length boats, despite the fact that, of course, education is important, but it is not enough. Education needs to go hand in hand with awareness raising, of course, sanctions and conviction. We know that all that will contribute to the blue economy. We really need real willingness. We need high accurate maps and aerial images, sonar points, and data easily available and understandable. We also know and have seen that public and private partnerships are possible at all steps, and they are a win-win situation. We need fair rules, clear rules that will remain consistent from one year to the other, which is very difficult in France. Entirely private investment, which requires, of course, a clear regulation. And please remember that mooring, yes, may be an important impact, but there are other challenges that we need also to address. Please, if you did not have the time to see my presentation, my whole presentation, you can scan this QR code.
I know sometimes people will take more time than what asked, but everything is so impressive and you really want to hear more. So thank you very much, Julia, about this. The only problem is that we are running out of time, so we still have about a quarter. And yeah, I think that if we have any questions, we can take them now. So.
Thank you very much. I will do my question in Greek. So,
I did not have the opportunity Good. I did not have the opportunity to attend the this morning's sessions, where you mainly restoration examples were mainly discussed. But what I got from the discussion now and your presentation is that these practices are still in a pilot phase, and we don't know whether they are successful, whether they will yield the expected results, and when. Which is why we still keep on with the conservation efforts for Posidonia oceanica. Now, I would like to ask a question about the cost of practices, whether you have an estimate. And when it comes to a seriously degraded, a seriously destroyed site, whether there are any guidelines, excuse me, according to which there is a specific threshold. So from this point of degradation onwards, for example, we cannot go for conservation, but we will rather go for restoration. Thank you.
Thank you for the question. In the Interreg Artemis project, we are evaluating these kind of aspects. The people experts about this active restoration. There's a lot of efforts. The restoration can be done. The only thing is very hard to do it. Very hard to find the right place where there's not impact. The prices, it depends of the depth. It depends on many things. We can talk about maybe for 30 euros to 500 euros. It's very hard to have a standard. So that's one of the things that Artemis will try to investigate. So I think Interreg Artemis will have the answer soon. We ended the project in the 8th of June, and we have all the documentation in this term. I think scientific and active restoration is necessary because it can accelerate the project. It's also very interesting as social impact, and also to explain how hard is to recover the Posidonia. It takes a long time. We want, as government, we need to be clear that the projects will be long term, because it's the restoration and leave the restoration is not what we want. So for sure, passive restoration, eliminate the impacts, is faster, cheaper, and we think is the best way. After that, we also in the Mediterranean Posidonia Network, we also did a guideline of restoration with all the experts in the Mediterranean to have a common way to understand how the restoration has to be done, because the protocols are very strict and logical. And in terms of cost, I think 1 hectare or 2 hectares that we did in Balearic Island, in Poyensa, I think it was 800,000 euros the project. So this is not the same that it could be in other areas, or what we are looking in. There are also a volunteer restoration that is cheaper, but I think the scientific part is very interesting also to know more about the restoration. And here we have Eugenia also, or many people that know more exactly what about this.
Maybe just to complete really quickly, I really encourage you to read the MPN guidebook related to the active restoration. I think there are 2 main points. Once the pressure is not here anymore, to give a chance for the nature to come back. After a specific amount of time, if it's not coming back, potentially in specific conditions, why not trying active restoration? But first, you need to be sure that you have natural recolonization close to the site. Like I think Eugenia this morning was showing for the fish farm. There's no point trying to restore in an area where globally, naturally, it's declining. And then to really compare it with the control zone. It's normal that after a few months or 1 year, the Posidonia will survive. The question is, what after 10 years? What after 5 years? So the results, and that's an issue we have. And as my colleague Berta was talking about the private projects and the private foundations, they want results really quickly. But after 10 years, we need to finance the monitoring to see what's going on. And that's one of the biggest issues so far. And the key point is you still have to be sure that, for instance, the law is enforced and the pressure is not going to come back. I take an example. You in an area where you decide to transplant Posidonia in an area where before you got boats, and now it's forbidden to anchor. If you don't have a way to control that a boat is going to come and stop anchoring here, potentially you will ruin millions of euros. If only one boat comes and anchors in an active restoration site, it's an issue. So for the cost, the cost. It really depends what we count in the cost. The pollution in itself, or with the law enforcement, the passive restoration actions that are always in parallel of the active restoration. If we think globally, it's between few dozen, few hundred euros per meter square. So that's a lot of money. So that's still worth it. But first, again, like we were saying before, to really identify the most suitable areas, not only technically, but also, is it possible to control the area? Who is going to be in charge? Are we sure we have the financing mechanism to finance the monitoring for the next 10 years? Or do we only have the money for 2 years? Because after 2 years, it's easy to communicate about the results. The question is, after many years, what are the results? And it's good because there are many projects, so every year we have more and more results, and some results are really promising.
Hello. Yeah. Daphne Manzi from the Gastronomic Foundation. Ah, sorry. Okay, I'm gonna speak in English. Is that okay for everyone? Great. First of all, I would like to thank you all for the so insightful presentations, because it's really important to have an idea and get this these perspectives and these advances that are happening at the Mediterranean level and at the other countries. I have specific questions for each one of you, which I will I will take the time afterwards to address. But I would like to ask Julie at this point about the when you said that at the presentation that you measured the effectiveness of the law and of the application. How did you measure the effectiveness, and I mean, after how many years, and which way did you use to do that? Thank you.
Comme on l'a montré, en fait, on a pris... Sorry. Oui. Donc, on a pris des données bien avant la législation et plusieurs années.
As we have shown, there were some data before law and after. So before and after. So we managed to compare the number of anchoring or the site, the mooring site, before and after. What is complicated is that the law was approved at national level, but there were local decrees. So we had to do it gradually. And then we are talking about a specific area, an impact area. But it is about benchmarking. It is about comparing. I mean, certainly by naked eye, you can see it on the graph, but then there is a statistical analysis that shows that what has been achieved is important. And that what we see is accidental, but maybe accidental 1-2000.
Donc, comme m'a recommandé madame, je vais me présenter. Je m'appelle Achillia. Je suis...
My name is Achillia. I am a student in the University of Athens, and I would like to ask about the participation of universities in this initiative. Is this initiative addressing only to the private sector, or can the students take part in this project in order to contribute to the protection of the planet? I could give you an answer. I can give you a brief answer. I didn't mention it in my presentation, but I would like to say that all the results I showed you were based on 4 theses. There were 4 PhD students that have taken part in this specific project. And these PhD students got funding both from the public and the private sector. There are also some others who are doing their apprenticeship, which means that there is always room for the young in all these scientific projects. Thank you.
Add the slide tonight, but for the MPN network, there are more than 200 members. I'm not sure we have many students. To be fully transparent, we need to organize as well a little bit. But we have private companies, but not only. We have decision makers, policy makers, NGOs, socio-professionals. So if you feel you want to be part of the Posidonia passionate community, you're welcome.
So, if there is any other question, or maybe someone from the panel would like to say something more. Okay.
I guess I can ask. Pardon, je vais parler en français. Non, peut-être ce qu'on peut faire. Vous conseilleriez quelles actions communes on peut mener?
I would like to ask you about the joint actions that can be implemented. What can France do in order to approach Greece? Are there any actions that are currently being implemented, and what can we do?
C'est pas facile comme dernière question.
It's not an easy question, and it is the last one. I have taken a look at the Greek members of the network. I believe that they are not enough. As network, we would like to see greater representation, both from the different organizations, but also from the state authorities. I could also show you the good examples in order to encourage the Greek authorities and to draw inspiration. And of course, there are some experiences here in Greece that we can draw inspiration from. The Artemis project for the restoration is a very promising project. There are different sites where fish farming can be found in Greece. And the experience that we can get at scientific level is very important. Greece is the third country in the Mediterranean in terms of the meadows. And you also have many institutes that develop and propose tools and data for the protection of meadows. At scientific level, we, the French, we can get significant knowledge from these institutions. Before, I talked about the minimum distance that needs to be observed. Maybe we could collaborate at a scientific level and through different task forces in order to see which are the studies conducted on the Posidonia meadows. We have good examples of collaboration. And there are scientists that are highly knowledgeable. At cultural level, there is the project of Elena and Posidonia 14, a wonderful project. And through this project, we encourage not only students, but also adolescents. We need to focus on the young generation. I have a daughter, 6 years old, and when we go to the sea in the summer, and when she wants to take a swim, she basically runs to the sea. And whenever she sees a boat anchoring close to Posidonia, she starts shouting, "No, no, you mustn't, you mustn't."
Oui, moi je peux rajouter qu'en effet, on a vu aujourd'hui, on savait déjà, mais qu'il y a beaucoup de compétences.
Today, we realized that there is know-how in Greece and there is knowledge, and MPN actually does that exactly. It conveys knowledge and know-how to other interested parties. Through the network, we can sow the seed in other countries, and we can also launch collaborations. This collaboration can also ensure that we will get the necessary funding, be it European or other. Unfortunately, I didn't manage to get funding for projects for the protection of the Posidonia meadows. I didn't get this funding from Europe, but I believe that if we join forces, we can claim for funding. We all have our experience. We have developed the Donia app, which is available to all, and there are others who have good quality maps, which we could then incorporate in the app. Maybe this would create an added value to the project. We have several different tools, not only buoys for the management of pressures, and I believe that all these are a major advantage that we can use. In order to minimize the impact on the environment. I believe that we can all work together in order to get a step further.
Comment on what I have taken from this panel, because this has been a very mixed panel. In the previous session, we had panel for the citizen, for the society, we had panels for scientists, we had panel for local governors. This one is quite mixed, and it's a very nice example. And I'd like to say that I take it from Fred and from Martial that we need good governors. If you have the right person at the key high place, you can have such a dramatic change in no time. You just make a regulation and you enforce it, and this is something that nobody can compete. So it is very important that we have good governance. Then I take it from Guillaume that we do have this underfunding problem in Greece. I might have an explanation as well, because for example, if you want to go for projects for the restoration of Posidonia, you need to prove that you have removed the pressures. And I try to explain that in Greece, this is something that we strive to find. So the Artemis case was a shining example, because we had the actual pressure removed. This is not something that we can have on demand, and we don't have real protected areas. So I think that to a large degree, this is the problem for this underfunding in Greece. But I hope that now with the new protected area management that is gradually taking over in Greece, I think that this can change significantly. From Berta, I was very I found very interesting the fact that the people with money want to fund restoration. They don't care if it is needed or not, and this is what very much puzzled us, and this is what the Artemis project tried to do, because we know that we need restoration, but it's not so easy. You have to be very careful where you need the restoration, because someone with money, the only thing that will care about is a nice picture for the social media. So for us, it is very important that what is going to happen, money for conservation is so little anyway. So what is going to happen is going to happen the right way. And then for Julia, I think that for me, what I take from your presentation is that well, technology is definitely the part of our problem, definitely at sea. But then you have some situation like this, and you say that maybe technology is also part of the solution. And I really hope that all these nice gadgets and tools that we have been informed about will at some point lead us to a better conservation at sea. So I would really like to thank our speakers. Thank you so much for traveling all the way here to Greece, and thank you very much for these wonderful insights. Thank you very much, and thank you very much all of you for being here with us.